How y'all doing out there? This is Richard Spider-Bond, and here to introduce our video, So You Want to Make Beats. Now let me ask you something. What actually got you inspired to want to make beats in the first place? It could have been a DJ's performance where he actually slapped the record on the 1 and 2s and made you throw your hands up a little bit, and you said to yourself, I want to make a record just like that. You could have even been digging through the crates one day and stumbled across an old 70s funk groove and thought to yourself, you know, if I knew how to make a song, build it up, and then put that in the hook, that would be a hit right there. You might even saw somebody on a music video rocking a certain piece of gear and thought to yourself, that's something that I want to do. Well, whatever the answer to that question is, the most difficult thing that I had to think about in making this video was music is as unique as the individuals that create it. Think about that. You got one guy that wants to make techno, another one house, another one R&B, another one drum and bass. And say out of 2 guys that want to make an R&B groove, they're flipping a remix, the results will be as different as night and day. So what I'll do in this video is I'll go through as many musical styles as I can to show you how I put them together. Now, I actually believe that one of the best ways to learn how to do just about anything is through repetition. Watching somebody doing it over and over and over. And then apply what you've seen to your own experience in trying to recreate or mimic something that they did, and then develop your own style. A good example is somebody learning how to scratch using turntables. A lot of people just watch the videos over and over and then mimic the movements and then incorporate that into their own style. And as a matter of fact, you probably would have never thought to even scratch a record if you hadn't observed somebody doing it first and then said to yourself, that's something that I want to do. The main piece of equipment that I'll be using in this video is an Akai MPC 2000 XL. And the reason that I chose that particular piece of gear, it's probably one of the most popular machines of all time for producing any type of urban contemporary styles. The great thing about the MPC 2000 XL is its versatility. It's a sampler, a sequencer, a drum machine, and it incorporates some of the most powerful song-building features that are in use today. R&B, hip-hop, techno, house, things like that, they all rely on sampling technology. But the MPC 2000 XL will not be the only piece of gear that we use in this video. As a matter of fact, we're going to pull out some keyboards, some digital multi-tracks, and some samplers that you can pick up for as low as $350 for music production. One of the synth modules that you see here behind me, some software, effects processors, you name it. And we'll go through as many of those as we can to get you started into understanding some of the tools that producers use. We'll also get some great tips from industry insiders in interviews about making beats. And to top it all off, a 5-step method for creating your own musical compositions. So let's get right into it with some things that you need to know about making beats.
Because there are so many ways to create electronic music these days, I've broken this video down into 2 parts. Part 1 for music production using hardware, such as keyboards, samplers, and drum machines. And Part 2 for music production that incorporates computers, sound cards, and other non-standalone electronic devices. Let's begin with Part 1. Starting off with our introductory segment I call Learning the Lingo. In other words, getting familiar with terms that producers and remixers use every day. Check it out.
Whenever you have a group of sounds put together to form the raw essentials of a beat, this is called a kit. You'll see me now push play and record on the drum machine sequencer. Immediately you'll hear clicks in a rhythmic pattern coming from the internal metronome. These are known as beats. I'll go ahead and tap the drum machine's pads to those beats and program my own rhythmic pattern. This is the process known as sequencing, and it's the way that songs are built using electronic music gear. Now you'll see me start to count with my fingers. Each finger raised as you see it counted is a musical measurement of rhythm called a bar or measure. This pattern loops after every 4 bars, and it's also measured by what is called a time signature. Now chances are that 4/4 or 4 beats per measure is probably the only one you'll ever use in urban music production. Now you'll see me start to change the speed of the pattern. This is known as the tempo or BPM, also known as beats per minute. The tempo is the measurement by which a song's speed is clocked. We'll talk more about this in the next segment. By the way, when I program a loop from scratch using these individual drum hits, this is known as a pattern. Now I want to see if you're paying attention. With what you know about bars, How many bars do you hear in this pattern? If you guessed 2 bars, you're absolutely right. And here's how we counted those. Now, if your timing is not very good, a sequencer can fix it by means of a process called quantize. Watch what happens when I intentionally just mess up and mangle this beat. What quantize does is move misfired notes to the closest available note, so in this case it was 16th notes. All you gotta do is just mess with the ratio and find what works best for you. But for most urban music, a 16th note quantize ratio will work best. Now we'll do it again, but this time we'll set the quantize ratio to 8th notes. So even if your timing is not that good, a sequencer will help you pull it together by means of quantization. Now let's do a few patterns of different musical styles and discuss the overall BPMs that distinguish their types. For instance, house usually rides between 128 and 136 BPM. We'll do a pattern at 135. First I'll do the hi-hats for 8 bars. Now I'll add a funky loop. Next I'll add the kick and snare. Over that, I'll lay down some funky vocoder samples. I will always be around. I will always be around. I will always be around. So get your booty on. Now I'll add a bass loop. I will always be around. I will always be around. I will always be around. So get your booty on. Now I'll change the quantize ratio to 16th note triplets to make the hi-hat swing a little harder. I will always be around. I will always be around. So get your booty on. I will always be around. I will always be around. I will always be around. So get your booty on. Drum and bass styles race along at about 160 to 180 BPM. The pattern we'll do now clocks in at 164. We'll start with the grungy synth loop. Then we'll drop in the breakbeats and a vocal stab. Now, hip-hop and R&B have the most diverse range of tempos, anywhere from 60 to 101 beats per minute. Now, instead of sequencing this particular one, I'm going to go ahead and perform this hip-hop groove live via sampled phrases that lock together at 95 BPM on a Zoom sample track.
Have we seen the actual reality of a monstrous crime, or merely an illusion, the product of a tortured brain?
Now I'll do another R&B hip-hop style track, but with a different piece of gear. Sampling keyboard workstations are another popular hardware choice these days for making beats. The Korg Triton sampling workstation, which you see here, is favored highly with studio heads all over the world and is a very prevalent choice for all genres of music production.
Just check out how easy it is to build beats on this thing. Let's start with the drums. Now let's add a bass line. Now how about an arpeggiated synth track? Now let's add some crazy old bells on the top. And get this is just part of the huge sound library that's built into the Korg Triton in addition to its sampling capabilities. This is the weapon of choice for producers like Babyface, Dallas Austin, and Rodney Jergens. Very powerful.
And now let's talk about one of the most often overlooked pieces of equipment in the studio for beginners, sample CDs.
Now, a lot of you are probably asking yourself, where am I getting most of the sounds that I'm using in my samplers? Vinyl's a great place to get stuff, but you're going to run into a lot of copyright infringement issues. I do create a lot of stuff from scratch, but I also use a lot of sample CDs. With sample CDs, you can find a vast array of samples covering everything from drum loops to orchestras to just about every exotic type of musical instrument on the face of the planet Earth. Most are usually running about $99 and free of the copyright clearance blues. Let's make a beat using sounds from around the globe, starting with Travelogue, Africa by Big Fish Audio. Listen to this. I've got my CD player hooked up to my sampler and ready to go. And when I find something I like, I just sample it. Yeah, I like that loop right there. Next up, let's see what we can find on New World Order by East West and Sounds Good. I'm looking for some kind of crazy stringed instruments that I can add to this. Yeah, I like that too. Now I need a breakbeat, and the king of all breakbeat CDs, Vinylistics 1, should do the trick. Let's take a listen. Yeah, I like this one. This CD even breaks down the breakbeats right down to the kicks and snares. And for the final spice over the top, I'll get some percussion and bass sounds from Megaton Bomb No. 2, which is part of a 2-CD set by Big Fish Audio. Cool. That'll work. So here's all the stuff I sampled and put into the MPC 2000 XL. I went ahead and assigned them and then sequenced a beat with them. Listen to this. With sample CDs, you can combine elements together that you never thought would work together. Sounds like some crazy old James Bond movie beat.
Now, for all you beginners out there that are looking for some affordable but feature-packed entry-level samplers to make beats, here's a couple of cool samplers I recommend to get you started.
Now you see me use quite a bit of the MPC 2000 XL sampling drum machine, which will set you back around $1,400 for the base model, around $2,300 for the studio version. But if you're just starting out, the most affordable sampling drum machine on the market is the Zoom Sample Track, which runs around $350. I'll start sequencing an 8-bar pattern, starting with the hi-hat. The metronome sound on this thing is nice and loud. Next, I'll add the kick and snare. Now I'm going to add a cool 8-bar orchestra sample. Check this out. Nice. And here's the bass line. For the bass sound, all I did was sample one bass note and copy it to each of these pads, altering each one's pitch. Now let's play it back without the metronome sound. This one's got kind of a tango feel. In addition to its powerful sequencing and sampling capability, the sample track boasts an onboard effects processor with some really cool effects, some of which I'll show here. Time compression lets me speed up and slow down a sample without changing its pitch. Use delay to create echo effects. Use reverb to increase the size of a virtual room. Use the phaser for some hypnotic robotic effects. People who program house music will love the high-pass filters. Here's one of my favorite effects, lo-fi, where you can make a clean sample sound like a crackly old record. You can use the edit wheel to add even more hiss and pops. You know, another thing that I love about this little box, besides it being really cheap, is its on-the-fly phrase looping. All of the loops match perfectly after using the sample track's auto-sync feature. Next up, Boss has greatly expanded the feature set of the popular SP303 Groove Sampler to create the hot new SP505 Groove Sampling Workstation, with tons of features DJs and producers will love at a price that's nice. With the SP505, you get 8 voices of CD quality sampling, and a 4-part pattern sequencer for easy song creation, as well as 26 built-in digital effects that you can use with either the SP505 or even routing your DJ setup through it and using it as a standalone effects processor, and the hot new BPM sync and chop functions. On the back panel, you'll find stereo RCA in and outs and digital inputs for sampling directly from CD or mini disc, as well as MIDI for easy hookup to your favorite computer sequencers. For producers that love to chop up beats, there's even a graphic editing waveform display that makes it really easy to see a sample's innards via the high-resolution graphic LCD screen. There's even advanced capabilities like zooming in and out, or for longer samples, scrolling side to side with the waveform to create extremely precise edits with ease. Samples can be saved on readily available smart media cards, which load huge samples instantly and also act as memory expansion. With the smart media cards, you can easily expand your sampling time to over 19 minutes with just one card, and no hassle with opening up the machine to do it. In the SP505, you can also choose from a large assortment of onboard sounds, 64 in all, including drum sounds, keyboard sounds, synthesizer sounds, and more. Program your own beats, drum machine style, right from the pads, or choose from 40 built-in patterns. You can also use the tap tempo button to rhythmically adjust beats to a groove or as a BPM counter.
DJs will love this function too. It's called the chop function. By analyzing the waveform, the SP505 chops the waveform into neat little pieces. It saves a lot of time in the studio. Check out how long it actually takes to chop this hip-hop beat into 16 neat little pieces. And there it goes. Now you can create your own breakbeats from the chops with an all-new flavor. Or you can use the chop function on music loops, like this one here. Just push the chop button and then F1 on the LCD. Now you can take the individual pieces and rearrange them over a beat and create a groove of your own. Check it out. Using Variphrase technology from Roland's revolutionary VP9000, getting loops in different BPMs to sync up perfectly is a breeze. Listen to this. A train wreck, right? Well, now push the BPM sync button and they'll all sync up like magic. Now let's take it a step further. You can also speed them up or slow them down, and they will all remain perfectly locked up in sync. And with the SP505's onboard effects processor, you could redefine the sound characteristics of a loop or live sound source with a really cool 3-knob interface for spontaneous effects on the fly.
Now let's hear some sound advice from industry insiders on making beats.
The only advice I could give him is just get some money from your parents, buy an MPC or any of your favorite drum machines, and start making beats, you know. And as soon as you could get into the clubs, get into the clubs. Like if you're in LA, go to the Century Club, go to Roscoe's to eat. You meet a lot of people in the industry. Make a CD of your beats and just pass them out. You never know. You know what I'm saying? Anybody could just like your beats, whether it's raw, West Coast, East Coast, universal.
First thing, always copyright your material. If you don't know about it, you can go down to a library and ask them about copyrights and basically give you an address. And whenever you do a beat or a few beats, put it on a cassette, fill out a form and send it in. Then anytime you hear about any shows, rap groups come in performing, even if it's at a small club or arena, always take your tapes of beats on them, and you never know. You know what I mean? That could be your next hookup, or that could be your door into the whole game. And just make sure that your stuff is copyrighted so they won't steal it from you.
Get gear and just start putting your nose in the grind. Spend hours and hours in there and just keep working at it. And you'll get it like the way you like it someday, you know? Whether it's 6 months or 2 years or 4 years or whatever, just keep working at it, you know?
Just find a good lawyer or a good management team to represent you, to be able to walk your stuff in to a label instead of having you mail your stuff in and it's getting lost in the shuffle. A couple of years later, you'll probably hear your beat on somebody else's song. You're like, oh, that's my beat. But 2 years later, you'll be like, yo, do you have any legal ground to stand on because you didn't have a lawyer, you didn't have your stuff copywritten?
In this age, actually, the way that most people are making the track work is to invest in a good computer and check out a lot of the sound programs they have, things like Wavelab, SoundForge, Reason, and Logic. Those are all like audio programs that are really good because it's more in the computer age now.
Herbie, has sampling come a long way since the 8-bit days or what?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, sampling is, the quality of sound is so much better than it ever used to be. Now we're going to have to deal with 96 kHz.
You can send your tapes in to record labels, Send it into A&Rs, attention A&R at whatever record label you want to send it to. Just put it, direct it, attention A&R, because that's the people that's going to listen to these tracks, that's going to hook it up with their artists that they already have and they need music for. And another thing is, like I said, listen out for the acts that are coming to your town in clubs and things like that. You know what I mean? Just throw it to them if you have to. As long as they get it, they'll listen to it on a tour bus or on the plane. And make sure you have your information, your phone numbers, address, so if they do like what they hear and they're true to the game, they're going to call you.
You know, I would say do a little research with the companies you're trying to get your stuff to. You know, try to make a couple phone calls, drop your name, and, you know, try to see if you get somebody on the phone and, you know, tell them who you are and explain to them what you're going to send them. So at least they have an idea, and that starts a relationship, a rapport with you and the A&R person. What not to do is blindly solicit them, you know. That's what I would just really suggest. Solicited is you like knowing somebody at a label or knowing somebody who knows somebody at a label or getting personal contact with somebody at the label and explaining to them who you are, what you have, and saying you would like to send it to them, and that person saying, yeah, okay, cool, send it to me. That's solicited material. Or having a manager or lawyer being able to walk it in. That's solicited material. Unsolicited material is just you blindly going in the phone book and getting every record company and just putting your thing in an envelope and sending it out to people. You know, and expecting somebody to call you back. You know, that's not gonna ever happen in this music game.
Now, for building full beat compositions, I use a simple 5-step method called FRESH. Yo, that's fresh. It's an acronym that's easy to remember, and it's a formula that works well in today's digital studio. Here's what it stands for. F is for finding the root material. It could be a batch of sounds that you found or created on a synthesizer, or a batch of sounds that you sampled from a sample CD or an old record. R is to record the samples. Nearly all genres of electronic music today definitely require it. E is to evolve and assign the samples or the synth patches that you've gathered into musical layers or kits that will become your composition. S is for sequencing and arranging the song. In other words, doing the pre-production, composing with whatever's at your disposal, like sound modules, keyboards, drum machines, or whatever you got. And H stands for hard disk recording and mixdown. This is when you record the composition to the digital multi-track hard disk recorder, or even computer hard disk recorder, and then mix it right to a CD or DAT, which will become your master that can be used to press up 12-inch singles or whatever else you'd like to do with your music.
And now you get to watch this formula in action, starting with finding the root material. I loaded up the CD player with my own sample CD called Fat Kicks and Snares, a sample CD which will be available shortly after this video is available. And once I found some sounds that I like that work together, I'm going to sample them directly into the MPC. So after about 20 minutes, I came up with this assortment of samples that I'll use to build the foundation of my beats with. The next step is to evolve and assign these sounds into a kit. I'll do things like tune the bass sounds and allocate the drum and percussion sounds to the pads for access via the sequencer. I'll also pick a few sounds from the XV5080 synth module by Roland to add some dimension and fullness to the sound, like these acoustic guitar and Rhodes patches. I'll be controlling all of this data with a Roland PC300 keyboard controller. Here's a MIDI diagram to clarify how this stuff is connected via MIDI to make it work together. But don't forget, MIDI does not communicate audio, so you'll still have to hook up your audio cables if you expect to hear anything. I'll be using the VS1880 as a monitor mixer to handle the audio inputs, and later on as a multi-track recorder. Now let's move on to our next step, sequencing and arranging. Now, just for the sake of saving time, I've already completed 5 sequences beforehand, but you'll get to watch me do 2 more. This will be the first verse section of an R&B groove. Now I'll add some shakers and a hi-hat. Next, I'll add a bass line. Now I'll add some percussive effects. And now from the 5080, I'll add an acoustic guitar sound. Okay, now I'm going to build the second verse section, starting with the drum pattern. I'll add some more guitar sounds from the 5080 here. And let's put that bass line on this sequence too. On the next track, I'll add more percussion sounds coming from channel 10 on the 5080. And now a funky synthesizer sound, also coming from the 5080. And finally on the top, some bells. And in case you're wondering, I can add up to 32 different extra parts to this groove using the 5080. It's a very powerful multi-timbral synthesizer. I now have 8 separate parts or sequences put together that will build the song. Next, I'm going to sync both the MPC and the VS1880 together so that whenever I push play, record, or even stop on the VS1880, it will control this entire setup via MIDI. Check it out. Now this accomplishes 2 things. Number 1, I can come back after a vocalist has recorded their part and flip a remix without having to resample the vocals by simply locking the tempo and arrangement on the MPC back to the VS1880. And number 2, if for any reason I decide to change, say, the kicks and snares, all I have to do is pick different sounds, put them into the same drum pads that the other kicks and snares were on the MPC, push play and record, and that's it. It's definitely a real time saver and it works like magic. Now remember when we started this whole thing how I told you I had done sequences beforehand and then I'd do 2 that you could watch me do? Well, here they all are arranged in the MPC's cue list page. The parts you watched me do are labeled verse section and alternate verse. You'll definitely be able to hear them pop up as the song rolls by. Alright, now we're ready to record. I'll just enable these tracks and you're about to hear the sequences come together as a song as they're recorded to the hard disk. Check it out. here's the part that you watch me sequence. And here's the other sequence that you watch me do. This 5-step method will work for any kind of urban music you want to produce using electronic gear. And once you have it recorded to hard disk, all you got to do is mix it right to the CD and you're done. Repeat this method 10 or 15 times and you'll have a complete demo CD ready to give to an artist, lawyer, or an A&R person to help you get your music where you want it to be.
And now we move on to part 2, which addresses music production using computers, software, and hardware peripherals. Now, in this half of the video, we'll be showing hot programs like Acid, SoundForge, Reason, Rebirth, and Logic, just to name a few. But before we get into the programs, let's take some time to talk about MIDI and audio interfaces, which you hear commonly referred to as sound cards. Now, probably the first thing that you'll want to do using a computer to produce beats is hook up your DJ setup, and then maybe hook up a keyboard, and then some synth modules, or even a digital mixer to turn your computer into a digital studio. So, let's talk about MIDI and audio interfaces first, which have a lot of people confused. First of all, what is MIDI and what can you use it for? Well, MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface, and it allows you to hook up keyboards, drum machines, samplers, and other MIDI-equipped music production equipment to your computer to produce your own beats. MIDI is connected to your computer and interface and then networked together with your MIDI gear, like modules and drum machines, through a system of MIDI cables. Here's a diagram of one of the setups I use. The MIDI out of the keyboard controller is basically the interface between my own brain and the computer. And if at all possible, you should pick up some basic keyboard playing skills to make you more versatile as a producer. From the MIDI outputs of your computer's MIDI interface, you'll then go into the MIDI inputs of various equipment within your setup, or from the through ports of gear that already have the MIDI in ports hooked up to the computer's MIDI interface. This is known as a MIDI daisy chain. Basically, the MIDI through jack is a mirror image of the MIDI signal coming from the MIDI interface's out ports. So for instance, even if I only have 2 MIDI outputs on my interface using the daisy chain technique, you can actually connect up to 32 devices to an interface with only 2 MIDI outs. Now, included in the manuals of better gear manufacturers are step-by-step guides and diagrams on how to hook up both audio and MIDI. So though it sounds complicated at first, it's really not too bad. But if you really want to get into making beats, MIDI is definitely something that you'll want to master. We'll see how it's used for a process called MIDI sequencing in a moment. Second, what is an audio interface and what can it do for you? The answer to that one comes in 2 parts. A, it allows you to input audio from an analog source into your computer, be it turntables, tape decks, VCRs, microphones, or any other analog device. Here I have my own turntable setup connected to a digital mixer that's connected to a PCI interface, so I can record the audio from my DJ setup into my computer. And B, an audio interface allows you to output audio from multiple connector types, and there are several digital I/O options to choose from these days. Why would you want to do that? Well, for example, I could hook up my DJ setup to this digital mixer, and then have the output routed to an analog RCA type output. But my finished mixtape would be 10 times cleaner if instead of using the analog output, I convert those signals into digital signals and then send them out to my DAT machine or CD recorder via the digital output. There's definitely a huge difference in clarity. As far as MIDI interfaces go, there are still a few on the market that are exclusively a MIDI interface, like the MIDI Sport 2x2 from MIDIman, which actually hooks up easily to your PC's USB port, and it's a simple way to get started with hot new programs like Reason, I might add. But more often than not these days, MIDI and audio is combined into one interface. I mean, there's still two completely different types of signals, just housed in one chassis, like the M-Audio Quattro, which supports 16 channels of MIDI and 4 channels of audio in and out. It's also easily connected via USB. Now, some MIDI/audio interfaces look like little mixers, and they come with free sequencing software. These are some of the most versatile types of interfaces because they can serve so many multiple purposes. I like to call these mixer interfaces because they look like little mixers, and they work great with popular audio and MIDI software like Steinberg's Nuendo or Steinberg's Cubase VST, and my own sequencer of choice, a version of eMagic Logic called Logic RPC that comes free with what I believe to be one of the best computer music starter systems around, the Roland Studio Package that literally comes in a box with everything that you need to make music, just add the instruments. Right now I'm going to demonstrate two of the most prevalent methods of music production in use today, and that would be MIDI sequencing, which should help you get a grasp of the basic concept of MIDI, and audio recording. We'll start with MIDI sequencing. Here I've picked a bunch of drum sounds from this keyboard and some sounds from the MIDI synth module to my left, which are all hooked up to my computer via my MIDI interface. I'll now activate my computer sequencer and begin building a beat starting with an 8-bar drum pattern. Next, I'll add a Rhodes lick from the synth module. And on top of that, I'll add a funky bass line from the sampler. Now listen to the way that the bass line plays back. It's a little different. That's because I disabled some of the pitch bend information to show you how MIDI is a little bit different than audio, and the computer corrected my mistakes via a process called quantize to make the groove a little tighter. Here you can see the tracks I just sequenced, and I can manipulate them in various ways, just like audio, by controlling the volumes and mutes and pans and things like that. Now I want to turn this beat into a remix. So what I'm going to do is record some audio that's coming off of my turntables, an a cappella record, and you're going to see the birth of a remix right here. Or instead of creating a remix, you can actually just turn the beat into an endless break beat to spend a whole Sunday evening scratching on the 1 and 2s. It's all up to you. Here's Roland's Dan Krischer to tell you more about the interface and software I just used to create that demonstration, so you can learn how to hook one up yourself.
Hi, my name is Dan Krischer, and I'm a product specialist for Roland Digital Recording Products, and I'm here today to show you a really cool recording solution called the Roland Studio Package. The Studio Package is designed to be a fully integrated recording solution for PC or Mac. Basically, the Studio Package is made up of 5 main components, and what those components comprise is first the VM3100 Pro digital mixer. Next, we have a software program that's provided called Logic RPC by eMagic. There's also a sound card provided, and the sound card is called the RPC1 card, and it connects our VM3100 Pro mixer to our PC or Mac, so we can use the mixer as our interface for our audio and also as our control surface. And finally, Studio Package also provides a Turbo Start video, which will walk you through the entire setup of the system, so you'll be able to use it just as soon as you get it home. Okay, let's take a look at what the Studio Package can do. The heart of the Studio Package system is the VM3100 Pro digital mixer. And the 3100 Pro is a really cool component of the Studio Package because it's got two purposes. You can use it as, first, a standalone mixer, a standalone 20-channel mixer. And what it provides as a mixer is two stereo effects processors, and the effects processors feature the best of Roland's effects, including our COSM guitar amp modeling, our COSM mic modeling, and also our speaker modeling is included. So two stereo effects processors. There's also a processor that's dedicated to dynamics processing with user presets, compression settings or limiter settings, those are provided. And there's also 3-band EQ provided for all 20 channels as part of the mixer. The mixer also has 32 scenes or locations for you to store all of your settings and routings for instant recall. You have 12 input channels, and 2 of those are XLR inputs with phantom power. Then you also have 8 quarter-inch inputs that can be either mic or line inputs, 2 stereo RCA inputs, and then on the back there's also coax and optical SPDIF I/O for you. And then also our R-bus connection, which we used to interface with our PC or our Mac. So that's the mixer just by itself, and again, it's a really cool mixer for use as part of a keyboard rig or a DJ rig, whatever you need as far as a portable, flexible mixer. Now, as an interface for a Studio Package, I can also use the VM3100 Pro to basically allow me to operate my Logic RPC software directly from my mixer. So instead of having to use my mouse to do all of my mixing and recording, I've got the actual faders and knobs and transport controls of the mixer for me to control my software. So I can do much more precise mixing, and I can mix with the feel of a real analog mixer as opposed to having to use a mouse. So that's the VM3100 Pro. The next component of our Studio Package is the RPC1 PCI interface card. And this card is provided with drivers that enable you to interface a card with either a PC or a Mac. And you can load up to 4 RPC1 cards in your Macintosh or your PC computer. Now, the way your computer is interfaced with the 3100 Pro is via one simple cable connection. And that's through this port here. This is called R-bus. And R-bus is Roland's way of getting you to the outside digital world. And R-bus basically is a 25-pin connector, carries 8 channels of 24-bit digital audio, 2 ways, also carries sync and transport control information. So what that means is I can also send my digital audio through R-bus to my computer and at the same time control my computer from my VM3100 Pro using its play, stop, rewind function keys. Also, R-bus sends MIDI note data as well, so I can use my mixer as a MIDI interface. So I've got 2 MIDI ports on the back, MIDI in, MIDI out, so I can plug my MIDI workstation directly to my VM3100 Pro and then be able to sequence and send the MIDI note data through R-bus via my RPC1 card to my software. So again, you have a fully integrated package with mixer, sound card, and also MIDI interface for sequencing. What we're seeing here on the screen is our version of Logic RPC. And this is a software that comes with your Roland Studio Package. And again, this provides me up to 24 tracks of digital audio recording, and I have up to 128 MIDI tracks that I can record. Also, what's provided in Logic RPC are editing tools, so I can edit my audio as waveforms. I can cut and paste to move audio anywhere I want. And at the same time, there's also tools for notation scoring and for locking your Logic RPC to video. At the same time, we also have a fully integrated mixer, and what our mixer provides is access to all 24 of our recording channels, plus I have access to all of eMagic's onboard effects. So I have choruses, reverbs, delays, all as a component of Logic RPC, plus choices of EQ as well. Now, this mixer screen that you're seeing, in a moment, I'll show you how I can control that, not by using my mouse, but remotely from the VM3100 Pro. All right? Now, if you wish, you can also use other software packages with your Roland Studio package. It's compatible with Cakewalk, Cubase, SoundForge, other programs like that. So you can choose to use Logic RPC, or you can use other programs as well as part of your setup. In addition to the onboard effects that we have that are provided with Logic RPC, we can also use plugins, and Logic RPC is compatible with DirectX and also VST plugins. All right, now let's check out how we can use the Studio package and do some actual recording. What I'm going to do is, first of all, let me play the tracks that I have already set up in my Studio package. All right? And I have tracks 1 through 8 recorded, and I can put those into play by pressing the play button on my mixer. And what you see on screen is a timeline that's following the digital audio that I recorded. And notice also I can name tracks and I can color code tracks so I can easily see where I'm working. So I press stop, press rewind, I'm right back to the beginning of the song. Now check it out. If I put the song in play again, as the song plays, I can take and control the return level of my volume directly from my VM3100 Pro. It's pretty cool. And press stop and rewind again. Now, if I want to adjust the other tracks that I have, my input tracks or the tracks that I have recorded in Logic RPC, I can go to another mode and check it out. I can access Logic's on-screen digital mixer directly from the VM3100 Pro. All right? So what this gives me is the ability to adjust levels as the song plays real time. So I can take and adjust my levels any way I want. And if I want, I can also go into a mode that allows me to adjust other parameters, such as pans. So check it out. I can set up all my pans directly from the VM3100. I also have control for my effects sends, in addition to level and pan settings. Now to record, it's really easy. All I have to do to record is basically choose my 2 recording locations. And so I'm going to lay down my new rhythm track here to 9 and 10. And I'm going to mute the part that I have on 7 and 8. Let's go back to the input side of the mixer, put the song in play, and we'll bring up our new sound source. And you can see the levels coming up here on channels 9 and 10. Okay, that looks like a good level. So I'll press stop, go back to my arrange screen, and now we're all ready to lay down that new track. I'll expand the screen so you can actually see the waveforms print. So, rewind to the beginning of the song, and if I hold Shift and press the play button at the same time, Logic RPC goes into record, and you see the new rhythm part being added to the song right here in real time. And I can also adjust that real time if I want. And bring the volume back up. Now that's recording. And again, I've got the effects on my VM3100 Pro, plus the EQ, plus the dynamics processing that I can use for mixdown, and I can also use the effects that I have in Logic for mixdown once I have my song completed. If you don't have a lot of experience with computers or computer-based audio, the Roland Studio Package is everything you need to be able to record 24-bit digital audio using a PC or Mac. Very simple and easy to use.
Now, of course, I realize everyone's not going to have a big old honking setup like this in your studio at home, especially if you're just starting out. I mean, it would take years and years and a lot of money to get the power of this setup hooked up at home, right? Well, I'm here to tell you, there's another way, and it's under $500. That's right. It's a new technological advance in virtual studio technology based on physical modeling and Rex files called Reason by Propellerhead Software. Even more good news, it's Mac and PC compatible. Now, on the Mac side, you'll need a Mac 604 or 604E, G3 or G4 processor, or better, running at 166 megahertz or faster, which is pretty easy to come up with at least 64 megabytes of RAM and OS 8.6 or higher. You'll also want to make sure you have a MIDI interface and a MIDI keyboard controller. Now, on the PC side, you'll need a Pentium 2 or better with at least 64 megabytes of RAM and a DirectX supported sound card. And again, you'll want a MIDI interface and a MIDI keyboard controller. Like I said, this program is so close to the real thing, I mean right down to the virtual wiring, check that out, that it will actually let you take this big old honking setup I was talking about and slim it down to something that looks like this. But I mean, you've heard the other setup, and how does this program's virtual music arsenal sound compared to the real thing? Close, I mean scary close, but you be the judge. Here's the very first track, this is a true story, that I did on Reason when I was finally able to hook up a MIDI controller to it and sequence away. Check it out. I started out with a Rhodes patch, and then a clav line, next a synth lead, then a bass line, then a kick drum, then some strings, and over the top, the drums. Right here you can see all of the Reason sequencer data as it controls all of my virtual modules, and I can also edit the sounds in real time, like this bass sound. Check it out. Nice. You say you want to change the wiring? No problem. Just push the tab key and flip the virtual rack around. Change what you like. Professional studio guys love to split up kicks and snares and hi-hats and things like that on different tracks for processing, and with Reason's virtual routing, it's a snap. The mixer has many of the functions found on professional recording consoles like solo, mute, EQ, auxiliary bus, and panning and level settings, and just about everything is fully automatable. You'll really be able to grasp the concept of synthesis after using this program, so much so that you'll be up and creating your own synth patches in no time. Check out how I modify this synth patch using the ADSR amp envelope generator on the Subtractor synth module. Rex files are loops that are chopped into several pieces that will actually let the pitch remain intact even if you speed the loop up and slow it down drastically. and Reason's filters sound really, really good. Listen to how this loop gets modified with the filters. Loops can also be given the synthesizer treatment. Listen to how this loop changes as I simply change the parameters on the amp envelope. This is great for fills and transitions when producing dance music. Since the loops are chopped up into little pieces, you can easily move a few notes here and there within the sequencer to create subtle variations of the beat on the fly very easily. Of course, most of these sampled loops were simply the ones that came with the program. And if you want to create your own loops, you will need to get the program Recycle, another Propellerhead software product, to create and import your own loops back into Reason. And it's compatible with a whole bunch of popular hardware samplers too. So you can chop up beats really fast in Recycle and then import them back into your sampler via a SCSI interface connection. Check it out, let's mangle this beat. So in Recycle, you can mash, crash, splice, and dice beats, shorten their length, speed them up, and slow them down without changing the pitch or vice versa, and then import your own custom loops into Reason or any of the popular samplers that I just listed. To create chops in a beat, simply adjust the sensitivity threshold. The higher the threshold, the more chops. Here you'll see I'm clicking on each individual chop to preview how they'll sound when played back on a keyboard. And you can easily customize the Recycle interface to show waveforms in different colors, shadings, and even sizes for even more editing flexibility. Once you're done editing your sample in Recycle, all you have to do is import that file back into Reason, and then you can have your own custom loops accessible within Reason right from the Dr. Rex sample loop player. And now back to Reason. Loading up samplers and sample players is easy by choosing from the included library with over 1/2 of a gig of loops and samples. With its killer sound and all the power a beginner or professional could actually want at a price that's nice, Reason is the virtual champion of virtual music production. If you'd like to add even more virtual power to your new Reason Studio for very little money, you'll love Rebirth 2.0, also by Propellerhead Software. System requirements are very easy to meet by today's standards, and again, this program is fully Mac and Windows compatible. It'll run on any PowerMac 66 MHz or faster with only 32 MB of RAM and a 16-bit audio sound card. On the Windows side, all you'll need is a 90 MHz Pentium or compatible processor with 32 MB of RAM, and it supports Windows 95, 98, and NT or higher. Propellerhead Software also recommends that you have a MIDI interface installed on your computer to sync this program with other MIDI equipment. Once you've got all that straight, you'll be able to add the functionality and amazingly authentic sound of 4 of the most widely used music production tools ever, including 2 classic TB303 bassline synths, a TR-808 drum machine, and a TR-909 drum machine, all within the virtual realm. Just listen to the beefy sound pouring out of these little virtual gems. And many custom modifications created by users all over the world of this program are available online absolutely free, adding even more sounds and value to the capability of this program. What's more, using Reason's Rewire virtual interface, you'll be able to run Reason and Rebirth simultaneously for even more virtual studio power. They sound great, they're user-friendly, and they're packed with killer features in every way. But don't just take my word for it. Download a free trial version of Reason and Rebirth right now at www.propellerhead.se and try them both out for yourself absolutely free. Now, perhaps the most successful loop-based music production tool is Acid 3.0, and it has one of the easiest to use interfaces I've ever seen. Here's Sonic Foundry's Michael Bryant to tell you more about Acid 3.0 and a complete mastering and editing tool, SoundForge 5.0.
Hello, my name is Michael Bryant. I'm the Director of Training and Consulting for Sonic Foundry. In this segment, we're going to be talking about Acid Pro 3.0. So, what exactly is Acid Pro? Well, it's our loop-based music creation tool. It's the easiest way you'll find to make original, royalty-free music right on your PC. It's definitely a pro product, capable of sampling rates up to 192 and able to record and play back 24-bit files. It's so easy to use, we call it the pick, paint, and play interface. So what would you use this application for? Well, certainly for creating music. With unlimited tracks, with hundreds of loops to choose from, with the ability to real-time tempo and beat match, it's perfect for creating music. But you could also use it to match beats for two different songs, for instance, or for scoring to your video, or to do your remix of a song. Perfect for those applications. When you buy Acid Pro, you get, along with it, over $600 worth of free software. For instance, you get 18 DirectX audio effects, SoundForge XP, 1000 sound effects, Vegas Audio LE. Over 600 loops are included in the package, and the styles range from techno to hip-hop to rock to pop to orchestral, ambient, industrial, all kinds of styles of music. If that's not enough, you can purchase additional loop libraries. We have over 60 loop libraries in just about every genre of music you can think of. If that's not enough, you can bring in any MP3, AVI, MOV, WAV file, and they'll all work right inside Acid Pro. And then furthermore, you can create your own by recording audio and MIDI right in Acid. Now, as I was saying, it's a very easy application to use. You simply pick, paint, and play. Pick a file to preview it. If that's the file you want to use, you simply paint that onto the timeline and then click the play button to hear your composition. You can continue to listen to the composition as you preview and paint additional loops into the song. Let me show you how it works. Let's take a look at the interface. So here we have a blank interface. Up here is the timeline. Below we're seeing the Explorer window, and you would see several folders like this that would have representing different instruments. Let's start with some percussion. So I open up that folder and simply click on a file to audition it. I find a file that I like and drag and drop that onto the timeline. And then as fast as I paint that in, I can click on the play button and begin to hear the playback. I'll just expand our loop region a little bit there. Now I can go back down to the Explorer window and audition a different instrument. Let's take a listen to some bass, for instance. We'll listen to this file, see if that's going to work. If that's not one we like, we can audition another one. Keep going until we find one we like. Drag and drop that onto the timeline, and again, paint it in and hear its playback. Let's add something melodic like a keyboard here. We'll add this melody loop to the timeline and hear its playback, and then finally maybe add some horns. Now, in real time, I can change the key of the project. I can change the tempo of the project. All in real time. Now, editing is very easy to do. The basic type of editing we can do is to use the erase tool. So we'll just erase the front off of this and go back to our Explorer window and find a drum fill to put in the beginning of this. Now I can also change key in real time. So I can place my insertion point there, type K on the keyboard, change the key to B, for instance. And maybe change it here, pick from the list to maybe make it C sharp, and change it again right here to the key of E. So all these changes you're going to hear in real time. Let's expand the arrangement out a little bit by dragging these 3 loops out. And if we wanted to have these fade out at the end, all of these events have a ASR envelope attached to them, so I can just have these 3 loops fade out. And so here we come up to our fade out. So you can see very quickly you've got a piece of music happening. And all of these, the pitches have been automatically mapped for us and the tempos are automatically matched for us. Now another tool that is built into Acid Pro is the chopper. And the chopper is a really nice way to work with loops and create some special effects. Let's take a look at the chopper. Here we have a project open that has a couple of elements that were made using the chopper. Give it a listen. So what you're hearing are some stutter effects. Here comes one, and another one. Now let me show you how those were made using the chopper. I'm going to come down here and open up the chopper window, and we'll just zoom out a little bit so you can see this whole file. And as we listen to it, hop's gonna get ya, hip hop's gonna get ya, hip hop's gonna... So we hear that that's the whole file, and we're just going to use a portion of it. So I can select a little bit of this, and we'll play it back. Hip hop, hip hop, hip hop. But I don't want to use all of that. I could expand it, or I could contract it. So let's just get down to a small piece of that, and then place our insertion point up here on the timeline where we want to build this piece, and then insert that 3 or 4 times, and then maybe go over and get the word hop, audition it, hop, hop, and insert that at 1 time. So now we have our little stutter effect. Real easy to do with the chopper in Acid Pro. Now, you also have the ability to, right from the Explorer window, go to a CD and extract audio from a CD. Let's take a look at how that works. Back to the Explorer window, and we'll just explore back to my computer and to our audio, to our CD player, and there we see all the tracks listed. So I find the track I want, drag and drop it onto the timeline, and it's going to automatically extract that and make it a WAV file. So I click on Save. As you can see, once it's done extracting that audio, it automatically opens the BEATMAKER. The BEATMAKER is a great tool for doing remixing. For instance, you can add tempo information to a song length file and then mix that song length file with other loops to build yourself a remix. Let's take a look at the BEATMAKER. So first it's asking if we want to beatmap this file, which we do, so we've selected yes. Click on Next, and it will try to find the downbeat. Well, we can play along until we hear that downbeat, and then stop the playback. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and place our downbeat right on the downbeat of the music. Once we've found that, It's now going to map out the first measure for us, even gives us a metronome to make sure that we're correct. Once we've got that set, it now beat maps the entire song. So we could go through here and find any measure and make sure that it has been beat mapped correctly. We click on Next, and we have the ability to preserve the pitch with that and preserve the beat mapped information. I click on Finish, and it now adds that entire song beat mapped to our current composition, and we can now treat this exactly like a loop and play it along with our current composition. Now, recording is real easy to do in ACID. You can record audio or you can record MIDI. Take a look at the interface. Click on the record button. Up here we can select audio, set our levels, or choose MIDI and use our MIDI keyboard to input MIDI data into ACID. The MIDI information could then play back an external synth or an internal synth in our PC, or be used with DLS files, downloadable sound file format, and treated with effects and mixed together and blended with the audio as if it were an audio track. ACID is also the perfect video scoring tool. So here we have an example of a video project. You have the video thumbnail up here at the top, the video preview window, and I'm going to play you a little bit of this, and I want you to notice that right now, all the loops that I have in here creating the music don't match perfectly. They support the video but don't match it perfectly. Listen to a little bit of this. So you saw the scene change, but the music didn't synchronize and change with it. But ACID makes that easy to fix that problem. First, all we have to do is go in and find the very first frame where the scene changes. And so here it is, right there, and drop a time marker there. Just press H on the keyboard. Now I see that my music is ending right here. So if I place my insertion point there, I can right-click on this marker and adjust the tempo to match that cursor. And now it sets the tempo for me automatically, so now when that scene change happens, so will the music.
From Kitty Hawk to Lunar Walk, you've got to have the right
So
stuff.
adding music, adding sound effects, adding a voiceover, very easy to do in ACID to support any video that you might want to bring in there. At the track level, you'll notice there's an EQ on each of these tracks. At the master, you can insert buses and add effects there, or there are assignable effects. In any of these places, you can chain together 32 effects. Now, as far as the final format of your composition, you can save to a WAV file or an MP3 file or any of the streaming file formats such as Reel, Windows, or QuickTime, AVI file, a WMV file, or a QuickTime movie. You also have the ability to burn to a CD, which you could then close later and take out and play on any audio CD. You also have the ability to publish to acidplanet.com. Acid Planet is a spot on the internet where people who have created ACID compositions come together to share their music with other people. You can also go there to download free loops. It's simple to do. All you do is click on this icon and it takes you to Acid Planet and begins the process of uploading your song. So there you have it, the easiest way to create original music on your PC. ACID Pro from Sonic Foundry. Pick, paint, and play. In this segment, we're going to be talking about SoundForge. SoundForge 5.0 is Sonic Foundry's digital audio editor. It is a 24-bit digital audio editor capable of sampling rates up to 192K, and it supports file formats from 8-bit all the way through to 32-bit floating point. So what can you use it for? Well, you can use it for recording audio. You can use it for editing audio. You can use it for enhancing and processing audio. There are over 32 built-in effects and processes, 18 DirectX plugins, and 200 some presets. Of course, you can go in and customize any of those effects or processes. It's also great to use as an encoder. Not only does it create WAV files, but it can create AIF files for Macintosh. It can create files in the popular streaming formats for Reel media, Windows media, or even QuickTime. It also is great when working with video. It has built-in video support, a video monitor, and it allows you to frame accurately edit your audio to the video. So when you buy SoundForge, you not only get SoundForge, but you get several other products. For instance, you get the batch converter. The batch converter allows you to process or encode multiple files automatically, saving you a lot of time. You also get a DirectX program called Acoustic Mirror. An Acoustic Mirror is a DirectX plugin that allows you to simulate acoustical environments or classic reverbs, hardware devices, and even microphones. Another program you get when you buy SoundForge is Wavehammer. Wavehammer is a great mastering tool, a compressor and volume maximizer built into one tool. This allows you to limit the dynamic range of your audio while simultaneously boosting the level to its highest possible level without clipping or causing distortion. It also has tools for working with acid built right into it. So if you want to create beats, you want to create loops for acid, SoundForge is the perfect tool, allowing you to create those beats, set the tempos, set the key, root note for transposing and so forth, and acidize those loops so that they work great in your acid compositions. When you buy SoundForge, you also get a spectrum analyzer, and this allows you to monitor and analyze frequencies in real time. And it will show you that analysis in either a spectrum graph or a sonograph. Now you can record directly from a microphone or from any line level source. Now SoundForge is also a good tool to use to extract audio from a CD. And once extracting that audio, it turns it into a WAV file which you then can edit and enhance, and then if you need, burn it back to a CD. So that's very easily done. Click on Tools, click on Extract Audio from CD. It's also great for just doing basic editing. Basic editing in SoundForge is like editing in a word processor. All the common functions, copy, cut, paste, are available in SoundForge and as easy to do. Let's take a look at the interface. We can simply come down to a file, highlight a range of the file that we wanted to edit, to work on. Let's say we wanted to delete that portion. By simply pressing delete on the keyboard, we have deleted that range. We have unlimited undo redo, so we can simply bring that back. If we wanted to copy that region, simple as selecting it, click on the copy button, place our insertion point someplace else in the file, paste it in multiple times. So it's very much like a word processor in how you get the editing done. If you really don't want to destructively edit your file, you can use the playlist cut list function to do some non-destructive editing. For instance, if we did a little bit of creating regions in this file, like I'll start playing it and drop some markers in here by pressing M on the keyboard. And then as I get these in here, I can create those or change those into regions. Just trying to drop those markers on the downbeat. Now I can simply choose Special, Regions List, and convert those markers into regions. And now open up the Regions List window, and now I can see and play back any one of those regions. And then open up another window called the Playlist window, and by simply dragging and dropping those regions into this window, let's make another one here and call it End, and another one up front here and call it Top, and we'll just drag those in, drop them, and so now we've made a new version of this song which we could listen to. We can right-click, choose Convert to New, and there we have a new version of this piece without ever having destroyed the original file that we were working on. It's great for creating loops that you could use in the ACID program. Loops are a matter of searching through a file, finding a place that might be appropriate for a loop, experimenting with that, and then creating a new file from that loop piece, and then using the ACID tools to acidize that loop. Let me show you how that's done. Let's call up another piece of music. And then as we play through this, we listen for a place that might be a good loop. Put a marker there. Put a marker there. Now let's stop, zoom in, and listen to this place that I've selected. You can see that I was a little bit early on this part, so I can trim that up to the beginning of that transient and have my marker match that. We can start playing this back in looped style to hear that if it is making a good loop. So let's fix the end of that. Trim that up a little bit and play it as a loop. Let me zoom in on this edge of it here. See, I'm a little short. Zoom back out. I'm just using the up and down arrows to zoom in and out. We can zoom in to the sample if we need to. Now, I'm going to zoom this out, and using these acid tools, we can search for other places that might make for good loops. For instance, let's move down a couple of bars. Right, that might make a nice loop, so all we have to do is grab that, drag it down to an empty place on the workspace. It create myself a new file. Let's look around for another one. That might make a nice loop, so we'll drag that down, create another file. Now, once I'm done searching for loops, I might also add that if we want to extend this, I can make it twice as long, right? Or I could cut it in half again, right? And you might notice that I'm doing all this in real time. I'm hearing the results as I make the adjustments, so it's a very fast way to work. Okay, so now this is one of the loops that I thought might work well. All I need to do now to acidize it, finish the process so that it'll work great in acid, is to come up here and use these tools. First, I'll set the number of beats, exactly 4 beats, and by putting that information in here, you'll notice it automatically calculated the tempo for me. To finish the job, I can use the acid tool and edit the acid properties. I happen to note this is in the key of D, so I'll set the root note for transposing to the key of D. And as we said before, it's 4 beats. So now we can save that information, so we'll just save this file as loop for acid right on my desktop. So now this loop is ready to go. I could bring this into acid and use it in my composition. SoundForge is also great to use as a mastering tool. You've got your music all done, you're just about ready to put it on a CD, but now you want to do that final bit of enhancing. Maybe add a little EQ, maybe add a little compression, enhance the high end, enhance the bottom end. SoundForge is the perfect tool for that. Click on Process, choose EQ, and we see we have 3 different ones: graphic, paragraphic, and parametric. Compression, there's always an opportunity where you need to compress your audio, and we have 2 different kinds of dynamic compression. You need to normalize your audio so that you're getting the most out of the dynamic range, but yet not clipping or distorting the audio. So we simply choose Processes, Normalize, and we can normalize to either peak level or average RMS power. Another great mastering tool is the Wave Hammer, and it's a great mastering tool in that it allows you to both compress and maximize the volume. All kinds of special effects built into SoundForge: the gapper, snipper, amplitude modulation, wah-wah, chorus, flange, vibrato, to take your music to the next level. SoundForge is capable of opening and saving to a wide variety of file formats. As we talked earlier, it's very easy to burn your audio to a CD. We simply click on Tools and choose Create CD, and it would burn this, track it once, to a CD. You could then close that CD and it would be playable on any audio CD player on the planet. SoundForge is also great when you're working with video. We can open up an AVI file and we see a little thumbnail of the video. We can also open up a video preview window. It also locks the SMPTE and MIDI timecode. Take a look at this menu: Options, Preferences, MIDI Sync. So if you're working with other machines and so forth and need to lock the SMPTE, you're in business with SoundForge. So there you have it, the perfect tool for editing and producing your digital audio needs: editing, mastering, enhancing, encoding, CD burning, all in one package. SoundForge 5.0 from Sonic Foundry.
How have computers changed the way that you make music?
Computers are a great way to help you get all of your ideas down very quickly, right to hard disk or whatever media that you're recording to.
You know, we're very close now to being able to create in real time from scratch with the appropriate software just about any sound that you can think of. I think that's the way of the future.
It used to be, if you wanted to get into production, you either had to know somebody that worked at a studio, or you had to have a whole lot of money to pay for studio time. you can go out and spend $700-800 now, and sometimes less, and get enough gear to be able to make and produce your own, clean beats. And especially with computers, almost everybody has a computer in their house now, and for a couple $100, you can go buy a program like Acid or, Logic Audio, or there's so many out there, and be able to do, a lot of projects with very, very little money.
It's drastically changed the way that I make music. It's allowed me to achieve things that I would have never been able to do if I didn't have the computer. I can orchestrate, arrange my songs. I can use all these different instruments. Things that I hear in my head, I can actually get down without having to go out and find 10 people to come over and pay me $1 million. It's allowed me to have my own project studio in my house.
When I first started using computer, it was actually a friend of mine, a good friend, Richard F. He actually showed me what was up with with the computers, how I was able to use all my sound modules and keyboards and combine it all on computer. Once you're making the music, you'll kind of like recognize that it's very familiar with DJing.
Computers are a great tool also because they're expandable.
Well, first of all, there's the cost advantage. Some people in wiring a studio spend as much money on cables alone as what some software packages cost. When you buy a traditional piece of hardware, be it a keyboard or a recorder or a mixer, it's sort of locked in time. It does what it does, and aside from maybe an expansion card or something, the expandability really isn't there. With a computer and software, you're less likely to become outdated, as you, of course, you may need to maintain your computer, but when you're maintaining your computer and upgrading, you're also upgrading the sound quality of your studio, the capabilities of your studio. And also the instant recall. Everything is available just as you last left it, so you can work on multiple projects at a time, have not only your faders, but also all your synthesizers, your effects, everything come back exactly as you last left them.
Now here's some great reading for anyone studying the science of making beats. All you need to know about the music business by Donald S. Passman is a deep look into the music biz, covering topics like choosing a manager, copyright clearance, and mechanical royalties. If you're serious about doing it professionally, you need to get this book. Keyboard Magazine really could be called the producer magazine. It'll keep you on the cutting edge of music technology, give you hot tips on how to use your favorite gear or software more efficiently, and give you new perspectives through hot interviews with today's top beat crushers. They also review gear that's just making its way to the street, and you'll really know it's the bomb if it gets a KeyBuy award. If you don't play keys but need to sample some hot chords to fit into your next groove, the Encyclopedia of Picture Chords will help you through with easy-to-follow diagrams of chord structures. If you want to take your keyboard skills a step further, check out Piano for Dummies by Blake Neely and discover your own style. The 2001 Songwriters Market Handbook. This book is indispensable. Inside, you'll gain access to 280 record companies, 250 managers and agents, 120 record producers, and some golden information on the craft of songwriting.
Well, I'd like to thank you all for joining me and my guests, and I hope that you have a new, deeper understanding of how beats really get put together and how many ways there are to do it. And like anything else, this stuff takes practice, but I definitely wish you the best in your quest to hook up some sick beats. So until next time, this is Richard Spider Bonin saying practice and conquer. Peace.